we've all been sailing in the world ocean racing scene for many, many decades. Sydney Hobart is always, one of the pinnacle events of the year.
Almost like a little bit of an Everest for a lot of people in the sailing world.
It's one of the iconic races, definitely in the top 5 races in the world.
It's one of those almost bucket list items that you want to try and tick off, and once you've done it a few times, for some reason you keep coming back.
And Wild Oats has got a tag.
You've got to get out of the harbour in one piece. You've got to get down the coast of New South Wales. You've then got to get across the Bass Strait, and the weather there can be shocking, as we discovered in '98.
The start, no doubt, is a very stressful time. It's a long race, and you can certainly lose the race if you make a mistake on the start line.
But I think it's the spectator boats that are just mind-blowing.
You always have to face some dramatically changing conditions.
We have no water, we need a high power.
Anyone who gets to Hobart in this race, just to stop and actually look back and think, wow, we just did something pretty amazing.
Sydney Harbour at its absolute best, on show for the world today for this iconic race, the Australian tradition of this big race from Sydney south to Hobart. Hi everyone, I'm Mark Beretta. Thanks for joining us for the 75th Rolex Sydney Hobart. It is going to be a spectacular start here on the harbour today. And joining me, a man who has completed this race 31 times for 5 line honours and 2 overall victories, Peter Shipway. Shippers, 75th is always a great tradition, but 157 boats on the start line is amazing.
Yes, it's the biggest fleet in 25 years, the 5th biggest fleet ever. We've got every Australian state represented, and Queensland a near record entry, and they're the only state that have never won this race on corrected time. 8 overseas entries, and to cater for this huge fleet, for the first time also 4 separate starting lines on the harbour.
And 2 great battles go on here, line honours and overall.
That's right. There's no doubt the 5 Super Maxis will fight out the line honours battle, but the real battle that the yachtsmen want to win is the handicap honours. And there's a group of yachts around the 52-foot and smaller look to be favoured by the weather, and they could win the ultimate prize, the Tattersalls Cup.
Oh, we cannot wait. It's going to be spectacular today. Down at water level for us is a man who knows this race inside out. He's won it twice here. He's also an America's Cup winning captain, Jimmy Spittle. How are things down there?
G'day Mark, g'day shippers, and obviously g'day to everyone at home, and welcome to what is setting up to be an absolute cracker of a day here. Now the forecast was for a 10 to 15 knots nor'east sea breeze, and I can tell you right now, it is all of that and more. We've got a good 16 knots building, and as this day goes on, we could see up to 18 knots, maybe even 20 as the boats send down the coast. One other thing they've got to be careful of today is the tide. Full run out tide come start time, and that's going to be trying to take these boats over the start line. So something for all the skippers and teams to be well aware of, but conditions looking fantastic. Can't wait to see it unfold.
Jimmy, thanks very much, and great to have your expertise down there as well. Now, let's take a look at this course because, Pete, as you mentioned, 4 start lines because of the size of the fleet this year.
That's right, and go to different turning marks at the heads to equalise the difference between the 4 starting lines. Then they put the bow south down the New South Wales coast, entering Bass Strait, which looks as though it'll be pretty quiet this year. Then down the east coast of Tasmania to approach Storm Bay at the mighty Tasman Island, where they'll turn to starboard 30 miles across the river to the river entrance at the Iron Pot, and then they'll go 11 miles up to the finish at Castray Esplanade, right in the heart of Hobart.
Yeah, it is the race that has captured the world's attention, and there you are on our mega wall. You can see from the air Sydney Harbour looking magnificent today. There's Mark Richards, the skipper of Wild Oats 11. They've won this line honours wise 9 times. Could it be the 10th this year? One of the big dangers, Comanche, right next door there. And things are setting up beautifully for this incredible race. All up, about 2,000 sailors in this fleet this year, 157 yachts. And as we said, it is the toughest annual yacht race anywhere in the world. They have much work ahead of them over the next few days. And shippers, this is the difference from the Super Maxi of Wild Oats 11 to one of the smallest boats in the fleet.
Yes, on the left, Take 5, the smallest boat at just 30 feet. And look at the difference in size. It's incredible, really. But that little boat on the left will probably take 6 to 7 days to finish. Wild Oats will be there in probably 44 hours.
Now we have the projected finish time at the moment for line honours is sometime Saturday morning.
Yes, well, here's the last year's winner, Alive, out of Tasmania. Hard to go back-to-back, though. It's only been done twice in the 74-year history of the race, but she stands a very good chance. They've imported Andrew Cape, a well-known Australian navigator, to navigate the boat this year, and the weather will suit these boats, but perhaps even the 52-footers, the smaller boats, might be a bit more favoured.
There's Naval Group there, Sean Langman back again, and he has done this race, shippers, in just about every size boat you can imagine, from the Super Maxis down to one of the smallest he had a couple of years ago.
That's right, yes. He was not that, didn't do that well last year. He was 11th to finish. It's a Rykel Pew 65, built in 2008 by McConaughey's here in Sydney as Moneypenny. And he's revamped the boat this year, revamped the crew, so she will stand a very good chance to push the Maxis.
He's a great competitor too, isn't he? He knows this race.
Absolutely. Well, here's a boat that could really figure in the overall honours, Cat Wincher. She's 104 years old, the oldest boat ever to race in the Sydney Hobart race. She's one of the smallest. She's got the lowest rating of handicap, and she's been beautifully restored by Bill and Kendall Barry Cotter, whose father previously owned the boat. She's got a star-studded crew headed by Michael Spees, 40-plus Hobarts, Robert Case, 30-plus Hobarts, and Scott Kaufman, a famous name in Australian yachting, has come out from America to sail aboard her. Another chance here, Sail Exchange, Carl Crawford's boat. He's a 4-time winning navigator, a very strong crew. Hugh Brodie on board, who's done more than 25 Hobart races. She's a 40-footer, and she will be favoured also by this weather that looks as though it's going to be favouring the smaller to middle-sized boats.
We should have a chat about that forecast too, because at the moment it's a nor'easter on the harbour, great for the start. Once they turn out of the harbour, shippers, we'd expect the spinnakers to go up today.
Absolutely, and the forecast for the first 6 or so hours is a very brisk 25, building to 25 to 30 knots in the vicinity of Jarvis Bay. So the fleet will be rollicking down the coast.
Now, you like
tricky.
this. You like Envy Scooters in this overall race. I like Envy Scooters,
absolutely. As I mentioned in the openers, that no Queensland boat has ever won the Sydney Hobart race on corrected time. Envy Scooters, skippered by Barry Cuneo. His uncle was John Cuneo, that won the Olympic gold medal for the Dragons in 1972 at the Munich Games. She's won the Brisbane Gladstone race. She won the Noakes Gold Coast race this year. Very strong crew out of Queensland. She's one of the TP52s. And on the left, Kealoha 2. She won line honours way back in 1971, a famous Sparkman and Stevens design yawl. Experienced crew. She will love the conditions this afternoon. But keep your eye on Envy Scooters.
Isn't it amazing? And that's the beautiful thing about being the 75th. A lot of these classic boats have targeted this race a couple of years ago to say, hey, we'll be right and we'll be ready to go for the 75th. It is an incredible fleet.
Look, one of the great sights in Australian sport, one of the great sights in the world of yachting is Sydney Harbour on Boxing Day. For 74 years and now for 75 years, it is a fantastic sight for spectators, competitors alike.
And you get an idea of the crowds there just on South Head, that is South Head of Sydney Harbour. They'll expect around 1 million people to be out watching, setting up their picnics and their barbecues, and just bringing the family down to the edge of the harbour to watch this incredible start. And as well as that, you've got this amazing Spectator Fleet, which you can see on the right and left sides now. They are sitting in a zone which allows them to be outside of the racing area. But once these boats get underway, the Spectator Fleet will move and go with them, so it's quite a spectacle. Hey, you're in for a great day. 157 yachts, not far off, heading their way to Hobart. We're back with more in just a moment. And great to have Seven with us now, viewers from the cricket, joining us for the Rolex Sydney Hobart. And you join us as we count down to the start of this incredible race. You're seeing there the chopper shot, the aerial from the start region, and the Spectator Fleet off to the side, the competitive yachts down in the main area. This is on board Wild Oats 11, and a little bit of tension there this morning. I get the feeling, shippers, that Mark Richards has not been thrilled with the feel of the boat so far this morning.
Well, that was the early report, but they'll sort that out pretty quickly. Of course, they had a disaster about 8 weeks ago when they broke the mast and crumpled the deck, so they've done a magnificent job to get the boat back to racing trim. They were in a race to Cabbage Tree Island north of Sydney when the mast crumbled in quite strong winds, and they threw every resource at it to get it up and going for this race. Now, here's another boat that's going to be highly favoured. Out of France, they've never won the race before on corrected time, Dargay. She's the old Patrice 3 that got third a few years ago. She's a very strong French crew. They've got a mixture of a couple of Australians, a couple of Englishmen on board. And as I said, never have France won it. They've won line honours with Penduick in 1967. But this boat, a little 46-footer, keep your eye on her.
And what a contender this yacht has been over the years, Comanche. Jim Cooney and family, he's got wife and son on board with him this year, big family affair.
Where are they?
But
Where
they
are
are
the guys?
highly competitive.
That's Jim at the wheel. Of course, she holds the course record. 1 day, 9 hours, 15 minutes and 24 seconds. It won't be a record this year. The big boats will probably take about 1 day, 17 to 20 hours, I think, to finish. And there's Comanche, huge, wide boat, and she will love these conditions and revel in them this afternoon. But tonight it's going to get very tricky. Down the south coast, south of Bateman's Bay, there's a big trough, and there'll be no wind in that trough. And who can get through that area quickly of the big boats will really stand a good chance of getting line on us. The little boats won't experience that trough as much as the big boats. They will slow down. The fleet will compress tonight.
We'll take a look at InfoTrack here.
Yeah, well, she won line honours in 2016 as Investec Loyal. Chris Nicholson, a very famous Australian, is aboard her. Tony Mutter will be steering her at the start. Joe Akagich runs the crew, and young Brad Kellett will be navigating her on her trip south.
Yeah, Anthony Bell will be watching very closely. He skippered her to victory when she was Perpetual Loyal. And he'll be watching her form today and across the next couple of days too, heading towards Saturday morning when we expect this line honours race to finish in the Derwent River in Hobart.
It's just going on with the weather a bit, Mark. Tonight, very tricky, very light, especially for the bigger boats. They'll try and get out of that light area down off Gabo Island, the trough that runs to the southeast. They'll break out into Bass Strait. It'll be easterly breezes tomorrow for the leaders, then freshen from behind for the northeast. The smaller boats and middle-sized boats will not experience such a light trough. They'll keep the wind most of the time.
Closing in on start time. Let's go down to Jimmy Spittle for an update. Jimmy.
Yeah, g'day guys, and we are fully pumped up here with the breeze, up to 18 knots of wind. You can see InfoTrack behind me completely powered up. All the boats now doing some pre-start work, getting out here, getting a feel for the course. Pretty narrow here in the harbour, especially with the Spectator Fleet. Biggest decision they're going to have to make once getting off the line is to what side they go of the Sound Pigs Reef, which is behind us now. InfoTrack currently up the left-hand side, and then they go up to that first distance mark, which is just
Jimmy, you've got the best view down there. Who looks good to you at the moment before the start? Who's impressed you?
Well, I think these conditions right now will favour InfoTrack and Comanche because they're the boats with the most amount of riding moment. They need a lot of wind to get powered up, and that's exactly what they've got right now.
You feel like you want to be back on Comanche today?
Yes, I'm definitely getting a bit of a case of FOMO right now, looking at the boys. But as I tuck myself into bed after a nice warm shower, I'll forget all about that.
Good on you, Jimmy. Thanks for that. Jimmy Spittle, two-time America's Cup winning skipper, and has won this race a couple of times as well, most notably as skipper of Comanche. But incredible fleet when you look back down and you see the variety and the size from the super maxis of 30 metres down to the smaller yachts. 9.1 metres in length is the smallest yacht in this year's fleet. And for the 75th, it is an incredible array. We are now closing in on the start. We are about 15 minutes away. We don't want you to miss this. We're going to take a short break and be back right after this.
Yeah, going to drive, guys, driving. Got an old boy here. Driving.
Go, Sam. Turn it.
Welcome back to the Rolex Sydney Hobart, the 75th edition of this incredible race, now famous right around the world. The competitors come from across the nations to race here every year. We have a large number here, and all of the states represented as well. We're looking forward to the start coming up soon. Big field assembling, making their way to the start line, just jogging now and just jostling for those positions. They get set. We're inside, or just coming up to 12 minutes to start time on the 75th Rolex Sydney Hobart. And of course, the 75th year of the Cruising Yacht Club of Australia, and the big crowds that turn out here. You're looking down at South Head in Sydney, so that's the gateway to Sydney Harbour. And massive crowds will spread right along this headland, all the way down to Bondi and beyond. And the views from there are spectacular as this fleet of 157 yachts makes its way south. But they estimate about 1 million people around the harbour today to watch this spectacle. It's an annual event for many people, and particularly lovers of sport and lovers of yachting are out in big numbers and out on the water as well as around the edges of Sydney Harbour.
Interesting to see how these four starting lines will pan out. I mean, the boats on the back, number 3 and number 4, which are the southernmost, they'll take a lot of dirty wind out of the leading boats, so it'll be very, very interesting to see how they perform out of the heads. There's Blackjack, one of the favourites for line honours. She's led the fleet out of the harbour the last 2 years, racing under the Burgee of the Monaco Yacht Club this year, and the first time we've ever had an entry out of Monaco. But skippered by Mark Bradford from Queensland, some really red-hot New Zealanders sailors aboard in Brad Butterworth, Simon Daubney and Dean Phipps, all on 4 America's Cup winning yachts, and Butterworth and Phipps on Steinlager, which won the Whitbread Round the World race in 89 and 90 with Peter Blake.
Yeah, Mark Bradford's been saying they put a lot of effort into this year, and they really see themselves as a strong contender. Here's Mark Richards on board, Wild Oats 11. He's at the helm.
Just coming up to the 10-minute gun, the warning signal to be fired by Jimmy Burke. He was on Crusade that won line honours 50 years ago. He was also aboard Dennis O'Neill's Coomaloo that won the race overall in 1968. So a big honour for Jimmy to be firing the warning signal.
All the crews just listing out now for about 26 seconds time. When that 10-minute gun goes, they'll synchronise to that. Top right corner of your screen, that is the starter boat, so you'll see the cannon fire off the back of there in about 15 seconds.
And Mark, you see, as you mentioned earlier, the spectators all kept back by a number of buoys laid around the harbour.
There it is, 10 minutes to start.
And there's over 160 markers laid to create a channel for the racing fleet. It's quite phenomenal, the logistics that go into this race.
It's an amazing day. There's nothing like this anywhere in the world this Boxing Day on Sydney Harbour. Of course, the size of the fleet, number one, 157 yachts in this race, but then the Spectator Fleet is enormous, and once the start gets underway, they will move with the racing yachts out of Sydney Harbour, and that is something to behold.
Yes, as Jimmy mentioned, ebb tide, so that means the tide's running out, so I'll be pushing the boats up to the line. Tacticians and skippers have got to be very conscious of that. There's Naval off Nielsen Park. A strong chance to do well and to push the big boats hard. She'll be in the top dozen or so to finish, I would think. Info track. She will enjoy these stronger conditions. The breeze now up to 20 knots, and you can see Wild Oats there with a 7 on the sail. She has a reef and a mainsail. You can see the mainsail down from the top of the mast, so she is expecting the breeze to be very, very strong as they go up the harbour and to make their entrance and through the heads.
So the strategies are already underway here, and as you can see, that Spectator Fleet is probably the biggest we've seen in 25 years, shippers as well.
Well, yes, with a fleet of that size, I guess there's a lot of friends and relatives and that are out there watching these boats, and it's very interesting that Wild Oats has got that reef in. That surprises me, and I would be interested to see how Blackjack, her near sister ship in some respects, I doubt whether she would have a reef in. There's Info Track. She'll be enjoying these strong upwind conditions to the heads. Big yacht, yeah, there you see is Oraton Drumfire. Had a first trip to Hobart last year, a beautiful cruising boat. And she'll be enjoying again these strong conditions. Behind her is Charlotte, owned by a well-known Sydney yachtsman Erwin Vidor. She debuted 3 years ago. And here's Scallywag. She also has a reef and a mainsail. The big S on the sail.
Yeah.
David Witt. She withdrew out of the race last year very early. She broke a bowsprit, but she's back better and bigger this year. They reckon she's been performing very well overseas. They've strengthened her up, so Whitty is very confident, a very good performance for Scallywag.
Shippers, you've been on this start line 31 times, and such a nervous time for first-timers in particular, but for all the crews now, they are on their toes. There's not much relaxing from here on in because you've got to feel out the conditions. You've got to get the boat to the right spot for the start line in 7 minutes' time. That's all you've got now to get things right and be ready to go.
It's the old story. You can't win the race in the harbour, but you can certainly lose it. And tragically, we saw that 2 years ago with the incident between Wild Oats and Comanche.
Yeah, and we often say, people say, why do they race? You know, why is it so tight getting out of the heads? But remember to 1982, Condor beat Apollo by just 7 seconds. So those seconds, every one of them, once the gun starts, everything counts.
Yes, they're just looking at Maverick. She's an interesting boat from Great Britain. She's got the Gilmore brothers aboard. They're sons of well-known Australian yachtsman Peter Gilmore. And here's one of the smaller boats, Spirit of Freya. Well, what a famous name, Freya, named after Freya that won 3 Sydney Hobarts in a row, 63, 64 and 65, the famous Halverson brothers boat. But this boat's a little bit different, and I think she'll be hard-pressed to repeat Freya's victories. But these boats are back on the back starting lines. The big boats will start on the northernmost starting line, and on that starting line, the front starting line, there's not many boats. They try and get the overall size of the boats equalised on all the starting lines. And
Give you a good idea right now of the size of this fleet. That's what 157 competing yachts look like as they get set to go.
Yes, well, coming up to the 5-minute gun, the preparatory signal, the first line has 20 boats on it, the second line 36, the third line 45, and the fourth line, the southernmost line, has 56 boats.
And shippers, the man firing the 5-minute cannon is Tony Cable, a legend of this race.
He was the first man to sail in 50 races, life member of the Cruising Yacht Club of Australia, one of the great characters of this race, and he has got the honour of firing the preparatory gun with 5 minutes to go. And here we are aboard a Wild Oats 11.
All pretty calm at this stage. Yeah. Mark Richards so intense before a start. 10 seconds now for the 5-minute cannon. There you see the back of the start boat. Stand by. Five minutes to go. This is it. The intensity steps up one more time.
It's interesting, Mark, that if any of the boats are over the line, they will not recall until 5 minutes after the start. So the onus is right on the boats not to break the start, and that they're not obliged to call you back. They may call you back. So there's a big onus on the navigators and the skippers to make sure they're not over that line. So if you can imagine one of the big maxis being over, they'd go a long way in 5 minutes. They've got to come all that way back. So you've got to be very, very careful.
Coming up to 4 minutes to start time now.
Okay, they'd be starting to rock and roll now. They'd be starting to line up, get their positions. See Scallywag there with the big S on the mainsail driving across the front of Comanche.
And shippers, we should point out too the rivalry between these super maxis. The crews, they race against each other, they know each other. This is extreme.
Yes, you see Jim Cooney there at the wheel of Comanche on the left. Voice of Mark Richards. He's the main. Man in the white hat on Comanche on the right, Stan Honey, the navigator, world famous navigator, one of the great navigators of world yachting.
These shots on board really give you a feel for the intensity leading up to the start. Everything's got to be right, everything needs to be ready, and as we said, you know, this race can be decided by seconds, so you just don't want to give an inch at the start.
We're jibing or tacking?
We're going to jibe. We're going to jibe. We're going to...
Okay.
Okay, just take your time.
You want to go now?
No.
All right, okay.
Just bow sweeping down here. Bow sweeping down. Bow sweeping down. Yep, bow sweeping down. Want to slightly turn a little bit? Okay, stand by the jibe here, guys.
Okay. You want to go into it?
Yep, jibing. Swapping wheels.
Tactician just calling the manoeuvres to Jim Cooney. They wanted to jibe. They're coming back on port,
really nice hold
port
here.
tack. Mark Richards, nice hold to tack back in. Juan Vila in the white hat in the middle of screen. He's their navigator. On the right, Ian Murray.
Ease the gear, ease the gear, ease the gear, ease the gear.
Ian Murray doing his 24th Sydney Hobart, a legend of Australian sailing. We're coming up to 2 minutes to start, 2 minutes to go.
Okay, they're becoming to final approach now.
Ease the gear, ease the gear.
Chris Link's on the runners there on Wild Oats 11.
Ease the gear, ease the gear, ease the gear.
Ease the gear means they want to slow down.
Ease. Good, ease. Let the gear off, let the gear off, let the gear off.
The big boats are stacked in the middle of the line. They're not down on that pin end where they normally favour. They're more up the windward end of Steel Point at Nelson Park. There's the three big ones there. Infotrack coming in behind them. There's Blackjack. So Scallywag and Wild Oats have both got the reef in their mainsail. Blackjack full mainsail. Infotrack tacking to leeward of Blackjack. Maserati just going behind Infotrack. She's actually owned by Jim Cooney. Maserati, so he's got two boats in the fleet. Here we are on Wild Oats.
Trim on a little bit.
Coming up to 1 minute to start, 1 minute.
Trim on. Go, Battler.
Starting gun to be fired by David Keller, a life member of the Cruising Yacht Club of Australia, former Commodore of the Cruising Yacht Club, former President of Sailing Australia and Vice President of World Sailing. A huge honour for David. He's done so much for this race, and he's running the radio communications aboard JBW, the radio relay vessel.
He knows the race. He's sailed 26 of them over the years. Now you can see them forming up with about 30 seconds to go to start. Okay. This is what it's going to look like.
Okay, well, Wild Oats has got the leeward position down there. Infotrack just holding Blackjack up. That will make things awkward for Blackjack to live there. Scallywag looks okay midline. And where is Comanche? We still haven't seen her yet. Here she comes left of screen. The red bow. She's going to be late.
Inside 10 seconds, waiting for the cannon.
How far?
And there they go. They're underway in the 75th Rolex Sydney Hobart.
Well, Comanche was late, no doubt about that. She's got a lot of work to do to weave her way through some of the smaller boats. These are the boats on the front line. Infotrack looks good. She's stacked up nice and high above Wild Oats. Wild Oats got a lot of heel on in this breeze. And there's the second line. That's the second start line. Some of the smaller boats.
But the real contenders for overall are in this group in the second start line.
They are the little green boat, Daguet, the French boat. Okay, here are the leaders. Infotrack looks good. Scallywag got a good start up to windward. Wild Oats pinned down to leeward a bit. There, she won't have room to come back and call water. I think Infotrack will be clear ahead of her. Scallywag looks good as well. Midline. Blackjack got hammered there by Infotrack, and Comanche missed it by a long, long way.
Is going to be able to cross them or not?
Hear the voice, will they cross them? Wild Oats will not cross Infotrack. She will not cross Scallywag. When she tacks, she'll be on port tack. She will not have right of way.
Real slow.
Mark Rich, you can hear him real slow. He's trying to pinch high to stay up there. But Infotrack at the moment will be the leader. Scallywag close to her as well.
Going to make it a really nice tack, guys. We're going to go behind Scallywag, right? Let's make it a really good tack, all right? Can we go early here? No, we can't. The longer we wait here, the better. Okay, stand by to tack. We've got to clear the... You ready? Stand by. There you go. Helms down. Tacking over.
The Western Wedding Cake on the Western Channel of Sydney Harbour. Mark Richards has got to thread the needle here. He's got to thread the needle. He's got no rights coming back on port tack.
Easy. He's the main. Come on.
Okay, he's behind Scallywag.
Go. Let's go. Come up.
So they'll cross the rest of the fleet.
Good work, guys. Nice job. Get the jib on. Come on, Bella.
Battler, calling the battler. Robbie Naismith, top New Zealand sail trimmer aboard Wild Oats. Getting a bit of grief from Mark Richards. Now Blackjack's in trouble here. Will she cross Naval? No, she had to go back. Naval put her back about. There's URM to leeward of Comanche. She's the original Shockwave built by McConaughey's for Neville Crichton. Very good crew on her. Some young skiff sailors, Marcus Ashley Jones and Pete Harris. But here we are on board Comanche.
It's all happening down at water level. Jimmy Spittle, what can you see there?
Hey guys, yeah, well, textbook start from Infotrack. Tony Amato, Chris Nicholson just hit the line full speed. And right now they've got a good little battle going with Scallywag, who's the next place boat. As they're working up the left-hand side of the Sound Pigs Reef, all the boats fully powered up here. And yeah, it's turning into a little bit of a match race between Scallywag and Infotrack.
Wild Oats 11 not in it.
Wild Oats 11 tacked out before them. They've just come back now. But at the moment, it's a two-horse race between Infotrack and Scallywag.
All right, Jimmy, thanks for that. As you can see, it is an amazing start once again. The Super Maxis have roared away. Infotrack looking good at the moment, Scallywag, and that's Wild Oats 11 at the bottom of your screen.
Come up, guys. Trim up, cover up. Nice job.
Okay, there's Infotrack tacking on the gas of both Scallywag and Wild Oats 11. They'll find it hard to live there. A bit of a slow tack from Infotrack. They need to get that jib in as quick as they can to hold their height. There's the channel marker on the western channel of Sydney Harbour, and just see to the left of Infotrack the bow with Sound Pigs. There's Sound Pigs Reef coming into play at the bottom right of screen. Scallywag had to drive off to leeward of Infotrack because she was really in the gas there. So it's Wild Oats will be picked up on Scallywag, and Scallywag probably will not cross Wild Oats there, but it's Infotrack holding all the honours at this early stage. What a sight. What a great sight that is on Sydney Harbour. It never ceases to amaze.
And the world is watching today as well. Sydney Harbour, after a tough few weeks, there's, as you know, well, the bushfires across this region have been putting smoke right across New South Wales, but today the city looks clear, and the world is watching an amazing start to this incredible race. And you see that huge Spectator Fleet is now moving as one, trying to keep up with these leaders, which is no mean feat because they are absolutely flying at the moment. They'll be doing 20+ knots at the moment. They're heading down through towards Sydney Heads.
Yes, they're just probably not quite on that speed, but once they get outside the heads and the spinnakers and the reaching sails come up, there'll be 20 to 25 knots plus in boat speed, especially later this afternoon when the breeze is forecast to go almost to 30 knots. Now here's Naval to leeward, done well at the start. There's Comanche, she was well back, and they'll be disappointed with that effort. And in between those two is Alive, last year's handicap winner.
Okay. Blackjack on the tail of Wild Oats 11.
Yeah. So it's Info Track, very nicely positioned. They'll probably go extend on starboard and they'll tack on the port tack lay line, which will lay into the turning mark. I think they want to minimise the tacks. You can see the good breeze between the heads. Plenty of wide caps. Oh, here's Scallywag. She's going to try and go back. All the rights are with Wild Oats. She's got to tack back. Oh, that was too close. You can't do that.
Stand by the tack. Okay, helms down. Take it over.
Okay.
Well, that was a gamble that did not pay off for Scallywag.
Let's go. 2-1. Twist, please. Twist. Twist, twist, twist. Twist, twist, twist.
Twist. He's not calling a dance move here. He's trying to have some twist in the sails to give him some height. Means that the mainsail needs to be eased a bit up the Traveller just to give him a twist. We can see Wild Oats' mainsail, he's had trouble settling that down. You can see it, a lot of backwind in there. Now I think Info Track's close to the port tack lay line here. If she can lay this mark,
Clear on Blackjack.
she will scoot away to the turning sea mark.
Cover down.
And the audio you're hearing is Mark Richards on board Wild Oats 11. But that is how they sit at the moment. Info Track looks like she will lead them out through the heads.
Much better trim now.
So just after 7 minutes since the starting gun, and it is Info Track leading them away. Wild Oats 11 in that battle as well, and Scallywag has just dropped back a little bit in third spot.
Yes, well, Info Track was short of the lay line, and she's got to tack back now on starboard. She'll go out and extend all the way to the lay line. She just, you can see one of the turning marks just in the foreground there. That is the, I think it's the first turning mark, which is not the one that these big boats will be going to. They will go further towards Manly before they turn. And here is the first turning mark for the big boats, the yellow turning mark. The white one before was for some of the smaller boats on the back lines. So Info Track, Nelly probably close to a starboard lay line. She'll go right up to the mark, tack, and she has a very nice lead. 61 is the Happy Wanderer, formerly Duende, with some of the armed forces on board this boat.
Yeah, these are the guys and girls Special Forces soldiers, and there are 3 defence yachts racing here. Navy 1 is making an appearance after 18 years, the first time the Navy's been in for a while. And we've got Gunrunner representing the Army, but Happy Wanderer is full of the ex and serving SAS and Special Forces soldiers. So a big g'day to them, and we wish them all the best on their trip down south. They're certainly built for the high seas. They'll do well. They're tough.
Okay, well there, 8 minutes and 46 seconds to the first turning mark for Info Track, and she has developed a nice lead in this race. She'll just ease the sheet slightly and power out to the turning mark, and they'll set their spinnakers and reaching sails, and off they'll go, rollicking away down the New South Wales coast. And here's a stack up. Blackjack's the boat that's done well here. She was well back, and Comanche coming into the frame as well. Now it's whether
Watch Scallywag. Watch Scallywag. Please. Stand by.
Has Wild Oats got boy room? Yes, she has. Wild Oats can squeeze in there. She will be first to tack. There she goes. Blackjack doesn't have any rights there. She's got to wait for Scallywag to tack. There goes Wild Oats. She'll be second round. There goes Scallywag in harmony with her.
Big Ace. Forward up.
And
50 forward.
so Scallywag got into the picture. She was right up on Info Track, but she suffered a bit halfway down the harbour. She's got back to be close to second around, so second and third is Wild Oats 11 and Scallywag, then Blackjack, and next around is Comanche.
Here we go. 3, 2, 1, checking
that pole you can see out to the side of Scallywag is once they set the reaching sails, they sheet the sails through the end of that pole to open the sheeting angle so they can get more sails in front of the mast. If they didn't have it, it would close the sheeting angle up. That widens the sheeting angle. It's a new thing that developed by these big maxi boats. You can see it's preset, and that's the sight from Comanche. Wow, what a sight. Terrific. Info track, Wild Oats, Scallywag, Blackjack, Comanche.
And just to put what you're looking at in perspective, there are 6 Super Maxis in the world. You're looking at 5 of them racing here. It is quite incredible and a real tribute to the quality of this race. There's Scallywag right in front of us. They've done a great job. They are dueling with Wild Oats 11. And credit to Infotrack, they've got away nicely.
She's overpowered Wild Oats, even with the reef in the mainsail. You can see they're really having trouble with settling that mainsail down.
Come on, get the jib on, guys, for God's sake. He's the leader, if you can. Paint on.
And here comes some of the smaller boats on the first line. There's Naval there, there's URM up to windward, and last year's winner Alive. URM has 2 round-the-world sailors aboard in Noel Drennan and Albie Pratt. They'll be pushing this boat hard. And then some of the TP52s. This is the group that could really stand out in the battle for handicap honours. First one, the first TP52, is the boat that everyone tips as the race favourite. It's Matt Allen's Ichiban that won the race 2 years ago. Terrific crew. She's been in hot form this year. She unfortunately broke her mast in the Brisbane Gladstone race, but since then she's been keeping on. And there she's tacking. Behind her, Guaylo, another boat highly fancied. She won the Cabbage Tree race this year. Envy Scooters, the blue boat that's just tacked. And then coming up, number 25 is Zen, another TP52. So all of these TP52s, there's about 12 of them in this race. They stand a marvellous chance of winning this overall race on corrected time.
Meanwhile, outside Sydney Heads, Scallywag and Wild Oats 11 here. Great duel. So this is from on board Wild Oats 11, looking back at Scallywag at the moment. They are in an arm wrestle, these two, and Infotrack is just headed out, first out of the heads, getting clear at the moment as these last 4 or next 4 Super Maxis are locked in a battle.
So what's happening here is Scallywag, second from the left, is trying to drive over the top of Wild Oats. Wild Oats is trying to squeeze up to prevent him getting through. So it's a game of cat and mouse at the moment. They're not far off the final turning mark. The reaching sails will go up and then they're away.
There's a view of the leader Infotrack ahead there in the distance. Here's Scallywag in front of us. And you hear the intensity from Mark Richards. I always think when Mark Richards gets Wild Oats 11 out through the heads, he should go and have a lie down. But it doesn't happen. He's got another day and a half to work pretty hard.
I can tell you one thing, he won't do that.
Get ahead of these guys. Main up, travel up. Really light.
So the view from Comanche, looking forward to the other 4 Super Maxis at the moment. They're in the chase at the moment. They've got to try and make up some ground and wind these in. Well, this afternoon's winds could be quite kind for them.
The big tactic will be by tacticians and navigators what course they set to try and get through this little soft air area off Gaybo Island. Do you go to sea a bit, or do you stay on the rum line, or do you even come a little bit inshore? Probably the good backers book is saying that you stand a little bit to the east of the rum line and try and minimise the distance getting through the trough.
So we're now about 14 minutes into this race. There's plenty happening out there. We're going to take a quick break and we'll get you straight back.
Where's the mark? Where is the mark? Oh, fuck you guys. Who's here? Which mark are we going for? Are you sure? Where is it? Shit, big car. We need a... Maddie, be careful, it's very windy. Board up. Where are you going? Board up a little bit, board up this much. Board up this much. Hey, Matt! Hey, JT! Don't rush it. Don't rush it. We don't need it. We don't want to have one here. Just slow, just slow.
Welcome back to the 75th Rolex Sydney Hobart, and this race has delivered another fantastic start. InfoTrack, you may remember as Perpetual Loyal from a few years ago, is leading them out of Sydney Heads and down the coast of Australia, pointing towards Hobart now, and this big Spectator Fleet is out there enjoying it as well, being part of the action. Some of the smaller boats further back now leaving the harbour as well.
There's Maverick on the left with the Union Jack just coming up to their turning mark, and these were some of the boats that were on the second line.
And there were 4 starting lines today, so that means there are a couple of different turning points throughout the harbour to get everyone equalised on distance. 628 nautical miles between the start line and the finish in the Duet River in Hobart.
Yeah, you can see the breeze, terrific nor'easter, classical summer nor'easter, building probably close to 18 to 20 knots, and will freshen, as we said, as they get further out to the sea mark, and then as they get down the coast this afternoon, it'll be a rollicking run. And here's Comanche. She's put the bow down. She's got a head of Blackjack. These are conditions built for Comanche.
Go below, Scallywag.
So you can see them just pick up speed out of that turn too. They are moving now.
So you can see all the sails hoisted, ready to unfurl.
It's not a marked out course. Easy.
Mark Richards, skipper of Wild Oats 11.
Okay. Get it up.
Passing the beautiful old James Craig there, an icon here in Sydney Harbour. InfoTrack has got the spinnaker up.
Settle down.
So what Mark Richards is saying, that they've got like a front rudder or board that they use to go upwind. It's not much used downwind, so he's calling for that to come up.
Let's go. Triple head.
Triple head, that means he wants 3 sails in front of the mast.
Let's get the reef out.
He's calling for the reef out of the mainsail.
Main on.
They want maximum power downwind.
Hey! Get the reef out. Get the reef out.
Some of the smaller boats turning the marks there. There's Sequant, the boat, the little boat with the black sails. 117, skippered by Kim Jagger. He's the headmaster of Sydney Boys High School. And 07 is Wings. 4 women on board her doing their first Hobart race, so they'll have some really enjoyable conditions this afternoon.
It's one of the great things about having such a big fleet, 157 yachts this year. There are so many first-timers enjoying this race and having the experience of doing a Sydney Hobart, which is for many is a once in a lifetime.
And there's still plenty of wind in the harbour.
Minerva, just
Minerva.
making a turn.
Yep, she raced last year, a few years ago, and she finished 15th in 2013. The Cox family owned her. And here's the race leader, Info Track. Massive reaching sail set. And the speed now 20 knots plus. And here the three chasing boats trying to work their way to sea. We've got Scallywag and look at Comanche.
On the Sydney coast, you'll be seeing them howling towards you with this huge Spectator Fleet. We're back with more action of the Rolex Sydney Hobart right after this. Welcome back to the 75th Rolex Sydney Hobart, and what a sight as our leaders make their way down the New South Wales coast now. They are clear of Sydney Harbour. They have turned right and they are heading south. Let's go down to Jimmy Spittle. Jimmy, what a sight it is. Must be amazing to be amongst this.
It really is incredible. We're just starting to see the smaller boats that were on that fourth start line starting to make their way out. And everyone has enough breeze to get out. Last year there was actually quite a large vacuum up here left from the big boats, but not so much this year. The breeze has really filled in, and I can tell you that the chop and the wake from some of these spectator craft, it's like a real washing machine, and the camera crew and myself, we've worn a few of those waves.
It's a good thing you're used to it, Jimmy. Anyone impressed you? Is anyone you've seen who thought, yeah, they're looking pretty good?
Well, I've got to say I was really impressed with InfoTrack. I mean, they got a good little lead going around that last distance mark. But now I think you're going to see boats like Comanche start to really put the throttle down and start to eat up a few of these miles. They're going to scream down the coast now, and it's when they go into this first night, that's where we're really going to see that first transition in the weather system. So it's going to be an extremely important night for the entire fleet.
Yeah, great night of racing, Jimmy. Thanks very much for that. Looks amazing out there. And as you say, still so much of this incredibly big fleet coming by. And you take a look there at one of the legends of this race, number 77, that is Keller 2. Originally came here in 1971 for just one Sydney Hobart, and the rest, as they say, is history.
My name's Paddy Broughton. I live in Pittwater, Sydney, but as you can probably tell from my accent, I was originally from England. My brother and I bought Keller 2 in 2016 to do some of the classic ocean races, and we wanted to follow in her footsteps. Keller 2 was built in 1964, designed by Sparkman and Stevens, that great firm. Incidentally, I think it's 90 years since they opened their shop this year, for a chap called Gentleman Jim Kilroy, as they called him. And Keller 2 was the second in line of his Keelers, and he built 5 of them ultimately and raced them in all the great races around the world.
She's built out of something called geranium, as it was the lightest, stiffest material that they had at the time. She's 73.5 feet long on a long keel, so when you pull her out the water, it's not a thin piece with a large bulb on the end. It looks like a large wall, and she weighs a whole 45 tons. So she's, nearly 3 times more weight for an equivalent modern racing boat.
Keller 2 is a really famous name in ocean racing. One race that it did in 71, which won line honours, it took 3 days and 20 odd hours, I think it was. And in 2017, our major objective was to beat that time, which we managed to do by about 3 or 4 hours, I seem to remember. And then again in 2018, when we raced again, we beat our previous record by probably less than an hour. And so our objective this year is to try and improve it once again. Wherever we go, there are people who remember the Keelers, and they remember them for great reasons, that they were beautiful boats, that they were raced extremely well, and that they did well in their chosen races.
Yeah, it's a famous name with this race, and just a beautiful looking yacht. Great to see it out there, and they'll have a wonderful trip to Hobart, just reliving some of the great nostalgia of this race. We are just coming up to the first half hour of racing. We'll be back with more in just a moment. InfoTrack leading. 31 minutes into the 2019 Rolex Sydney Hobart, the 75th edition of this incredible race, and so many great stories, so many amazing boats out there. InfoTrack leads them at the moment, but if you go back from there through this fleet, there are just so many brilliant stories like this yacht for Fidelis.
Fidelis was built in 1964 in New Zealand, and it's probably one of the most famous New Zealand offshore yachts. But the designs go back to the 1930s, so the guy who built it actually knocked off the lines, knocked off the design, and then had the boat built in Auckland. And the first year, it wasn't really very successful, and then sadly, he passed away. So the next guy that got hold of the boat actually really ramped it up, fixed it up, changed some of the rig, changed some of the underwater sections and the rudder and so on, put a skeg rudder in it, and he's the guy that then became synonymous with the boat in the 60s, and he won the Sydney Hobart in 1966. So that was the wild oats of the day, and they won by just over 17 hours on the next boat. We were looking around for a boat in 93, 94 to go and compete in what was then the 50th Sydney Hobart race, and we looked at loads and loads of different boats, and I had an old 40-footer, and we thought, well, we'll try and get something that's a bit classic, something that's a bit older, and try and get reenact some of the spirit of the 50th. And so I eventually found this boat, and it was in New Zealand, and it was in pretty sad repair, but I flew over there, did a deal to try and charter the yacht, and long story short, I finished up buying it. But we only got the boat here about 8 or 9 weeks before they started that 50th Sydney Hobart race. The boat's done 7 Sydney Hobarts, including the win in '66, but that was the fastest time that we'd ever done in 2016. And that was after breaking the boom halfway across Bass Strait. So we had a bit of drama with all of that, and it slowed us down 4 or 5 hours. We had to strap the boom up, put it back together again, and then finish up in Hobart. Very grueling race. It's very challenging. You never quite know what's going to be there, and at the end of it, it's always hugely satisfying, however hard it may be in the 3 or 4 days to get there.
It's all part of the heritage that makes the Sydney Hobart such a magnificent race. You've got the extreme high tech, and you've got these beautiful nostalgic boats who are still incredibly capable in this day and age.
Yes, well, Fidelis still holds the record of the second greatest winning margin in the history of this race, in 74 years. So it's a wonderful boat, and there's a lot of stories that go with this race, and here's one of them.
There's Mel McPherson, our cameraman, who has been on board Comanche, just departing Comanche. So that's how we get you these magnificent shots. There's a helicopter up above her that monitors her now, and she'll be picked up in the rescue boat along with her gear. Mel does this year after year. She loves it. It's part of her job. It's one of the highlights of a year. And good to see Mel safely recovered, and we'll see you back next year to do it all again. But that's how we get you these amazing shots from on board, is thanks to the great work of Mel. And just to give you an idea of how fast Comanche's flying along, from when Mel got off, look how far they have travelled. It is a great indication of how fast they're going at the moment. Around about, she was about 20 knots worth.
Yeah, there'll be 20 knots plus, and this is really in Comanche weather now. She's clearly moved into second place, and these boats with high stability, Comanche and InfoTrack, with the breeze slightly probably east-northeast, they're really revelling in these conditions. But it's interesting, so many stories within this race. Jack Earl, one of the founding fathers of the race in 1945, 2 of his grandchildren are racing. Tiari's actually on Fidelis, Tiari Tomaszewski, and her brother Matt is aboard the 3-time winner Love and War. So there's stories within stories.
Yeah, we love that about this race. 35 minutes into the 75th Rolex Sydney Hobart, the 2019 race. InfoTrack is leading. We're back in a moment. almost 40 minutes into this race, and the first big change of lead since InfoTrack led them out of Sydney Harbour. This is Comanche flying along at the moment because, Peter Shipway, this is really Comanche-made conditions.
Absolutely, you could say she's on the warpath, no doubt about that. She's taken the lead. You can see InfoTrack inshore of her, Coogee in the background, and they've really extended away from the other three maxis.
Comanche just flying at the moment. That's incredible. So 20 plus knots, and then back from there some of the other massive super maxis, and then the remainder of this fleet, so many of them, so much competition this year. 157 yachts in this fleet, and that's the images that we get. It is just incredible. Let's get down to Jimmy Spittle for an update. Jimmy?
Yeah, hey guys, you can see behind me here is offshore powerboating legend Bill Barry-Cotter. Now this is quite a change of pace for him. He's used to having the throttles down on his offshore powerboat, but he's done this beautiful restoration of Cutwincher here, and they're just making their way out to the distance mark. They're going to have a beautiful sail down the coast in nor'easter, and then they're going to go into tonight into the first transition. But it really is a case of extremes when you see the super maxis and then a beautiful old boat like this.
Yeah, it's gorgeous, isn't it? Jimmy, it'd be a bit slow for you, Cutwincher, wouldn't it?
Yes, mate, too small. Yeah, much too small for me.
Thanks very much. Beautiful boat, and as we said, that's part of this incredible race. Army, the second smallest boat here, Gunrunner, 9.2 metres, and this is the Army team. They train about 200 sailors a year in the Army sailing program, and this is the highlight. The group gets selected to come and race the Sydney Hobart, so they are going to be out on the water, but they are facing a bit of challenge from the Navy.
I'm Murray Stewart. I'm from the Australian Army. I live at Janelli though, posted to Victoria Barracks, and I'm on the boat Gunrunner. So back in 1986, the Army bought the boat Gunrunner, just a recreational thing for the soldiers. And it's been owned and operated by the Army Sailing Club ever since. The crew is all currently serving Army. We've got 6 men and 2 women. Only 2, myself and one other, have done the Hobart before. So for the other 6, this is their first time south. So all currently serving defence members, most of them with operational experience. The Sydney Hobart is, one of the ultimate challenges in sailing. And, for Army, we're always up for a challenge. But I guess the Sydney Hobart's just the centrepiece of our wider sailing activity. We put around 200 soldiers through Gunrunner every year, and that's to develop their resilience and Army values. So whilst the Hobart is the flagship for the Lucky 8, a different 7 and me are going to sail it back, and then it'll just continue the sailing program. So the Hobart's just a highlight, but just one of the many sailing things we do. I mean, sure, it's small, but, it's big compared to inside of a tank. And so, the Army people are used to being in small teams, and so it just works really well. I like it. That's why I'm coming back for my 3rd Hobart.
Yeah, it's an amazing boat, Gunrunner, another legend of this race.
I can't believe, Mark, I went to Hobart 3 times on a boat that size. I wouldn't go to Manly on a boat that size these days. But here's the race leader, revelling in her conditions, and the breeze will get stronger this afternoon. Here's back in the fleet some of the boats that started perhaps on the back line. That's URM, the original Shockwave 72-footer. All the fleet are going to have idyllic conditions tonight until they hit that transition zone that Jimmy was talking about, when it's going to get light and fluky. Who can get through that the best? Well, they'll probably come out near the top of the leaderboard in tomorrow morning's race sked. You see a guy chasing Comanche in a jet ski there. He's a long way from home.
Yes, isn't he? You want to make sure you had plenty of fuel, wouldn't you? Because you'd be going pretty hard to keep up at the moment.
Jim Cooney still at the helm of Comanche. Crew stacked down the windward side. Tacticians and navigators be working on their tactics for the next few hours ahead. There's Santa Claus and his helper.
So Comanche shippers, they'll be making hay while the sun shines over the next few hours to try and get all the advantage they can from the biggest to the smallest now.
There's the Take 5. Little Peter Cole design 30-footer. Just round the first turning mark, heading to sea to the second turning mark. Crew already in their wet weather gear, a few waves over the bow. That's a long way to Hobart.
They do pretty well, though, overall, don't they? They have a good punch.
Oh, it's terrific. It's really great to see these smaller boats out there, and they probably, at the end of the day, realise they don't have a chance for overall honours, but their honours is to get there and say they've done a Hobart.
Yep, everyone's here for a different reason. Some, like Comanche, are racing for line honours and overall, and some are just racing for the experience to have made it to Hobart.
You can see there's triple head rig on Comanche. There's 3 sails forward of the mast. They've got that outrigger arm to get the shooting angles wider. There's, you can see the outrigger there. Way out, so they've got the front sail sheeted as far outboard as they can, the middle sail sheeted halfway, and then the orange sail, which is actually their storm jib, is the 3rd sail. So they can't put any more horsepower into that boat at the moment. The bow out, bit of water ballast in, the crew's stacked it down the back to keep the bow out, maximum stability, big wide boat at absolute maximum pace.
Comanche at full hammer, what a sight. And as you look back from Comanche, the rest of this incredible fleet making their way now towards Hobart. We're coming up to 45 minutes into the 2019 Rolex Sydney Hobart. We'll bring you more right after this.
This is Will, he's the tall one. Will and I have been together since the London Olympics, but trained with each other about 2009. Great partnership. And
we're not dating.
We're not dating.
This is Matt Belcher. We've sailed together first time in 2010, just after he won the gold in London. We've been campaigning together, so this will be our second games. Looking forward to it.
I steer the boat. Will is really in charge of the speed of the boat. He's sort of balancing on the side and using as much leverage as we can get to generate the power. The silver medal in Rio was an amazing experience, and we're really proud of that performance. We came away from the games thinking maybe we could have done a little bit better. We've been working super hard for the last 3.5 years to try and, step more on the dais. We've been to Tokyo or Enoshima, the Olympic site, about 15 times. Fair to say that we're getting quite a good understanding of the conditions.
It's very different to Rio, which is really cool. Really lovely people, very organised and structured. Mount Fuji's in the background.
And earlier this year, we had 3 major events. We had our World Championships, the test event, and a Sailing World Cup, and we were fortunate enough to win all 3 of those. So we're starting to get a good handle on what to expect for the Olympics.
Tokyo's always been dreaming about gold.
Tokyo 2020, we cannot wait. Our sailors world class, no matter what boats they're in. We cannot wait for Tokyo. Out on Sydney, well, beyond Sydney Harbour now, out off the coast of Sydney. This is the scene. This big fleet of 157 yachts in the 2019 Sydney Hobart. On their way south now, the leaders, the Super Maxis, are ahead of them. They're down south of Coogee at the moment, making great time, particularly Infotrack sitting in second behind Comanche. And Comanche hitting 20 knots plus at the moment, and they will do for the next few hours as they make their way south.
Naval Group, Sean Langman's 65-footer. She was 11th to finish last year, and he's looking to improve on that, and just that is beautiful conditions. Double head rig, she's got the reaching sail set on right on the bowsprit, and then the staysail inside of that. And she'd be doing 15, 18 knots easy, and that looks like one of the race leaders going well to sea. So it's interesting tactics from Stan Honey, the navigator on Comanche. He's taking a more seaward course than perhaps some of the others, even at this very early stage. And that's what the weather pundits are saying. The way south is going to be very tricky.
So just to expand on that, Pete, we expect tonight that, this northeasterly will blow through for a few hours, and then at some stage there'll be a southerly come through, and that's where it gets tricky.
Well, it's not so much a southerly, it's a very light southerly. It's not a southerly buster by any means. It's an area of very little or low wind speed. It'll probably get round to the south or southeast at only about 5 to 10 knots. And the big boats will hit that first, and it'll last longer for them. The smaller boats might not even hit this trough. So the big boats have got to navigate their way through it, and whether you go to sea and try and get through it quicker or to come inshore and be quicker through it. It's a tactical game now. This is not a straightforward race by any means.
Fantastic, and just the way we love it. So the trick for now is just bunker down and move as quick as you can. Get south on this beautiful wind, and you can see everyone's got the spinnaker up, and away they go.
As the navigators and tacticians and skippers be working hard on their weather now to get their weather routing right to get through this, and then after they get through this tomorrow, it's pretty straightforward. There's Zen, another of the TP52s owned by Gordon Kettleby. She retired last year, but she's back again this year, and another boat that could perform well if the TP52s are to figure on the podium.
They had some rig damage last year.
Yes, well, you can see how far Comanche's worked to seaward. There's Botany Bay in the background. You can see Infotrack inshore of Comanche, but Stan Honey's got her going well to seaward, whereas the other 4 Maxis are staying a little bit more inshore of her. And what a sight that is.
Every bit of sail they can muster, and incredible speed. Beautiful sight.
So the weather is saying that, as I said earlier, Comanche's record is 1 day, 9 hours, which she'll be, I would think, 10 to 12 hours behind that this year based on the weather models. because the big slowdown tonight, and they could take some 10 to 12 hours to really get through the light spot before they get on their way again tomorrow. So it's going to be very tricky for come about 6 or 7 o'clock tonight. And these leaders will be down south of Bateman's Bay at that stage. And here's No Limit. She did very well last year. She was 3rd overall as Voodoo. And on board Tony Ellis on a record-breaking 52nd trip to Hobart. Helmsman is Barney Walker, a 3-times winner of this race. She's racing out of Victoria. And as I said, did very, very well last year. A Reichel Pugh 63.
So Tony Ellis overtakes Tony Cable, who has also done 51. That's 52 now as of this year. Congratulations to Tony Ellis. Amazing achievement. What a view.
Just see the width of Comanche compared to, say, Blackjack or Wild Oat. She's a very wide boat in the stern, the back sections of the boat, as is Infotrack. Good stability in these heavier breezes, and that's what proved that for Infotrack down the harbour was a real win for him. And here's Hollywood Boulevard, probably named after the owner, Ray Roberts. He's commonly known as Hollywood, one of the great characters of this race. This boat has performed well. It was second to Loki in 2011, when known as Living Doll. Now, Ray's been a great competitor over the years in a various number of boats, and this boat's got twin rudders. You can see the windward rudder just out of the water there, and she's got a highly experienced crew, and Ray's always been there or thereabouts with his yachts.
Great to see them, shippers, in these conditions, really doing what they were made to do, really getting good speed and in full flight. It's incredible.
Yes, a lot of these boats, like Comanche and some of the big boats, they love going downwind, but some of the boats in the fleet like to go upwind. It might sound a strange thing to say, but they're built to go upwind in stronger conditions. It's not pleasant, but it's performing for the boats. And there's Jim Cooney and the boys. You can see his wife there, Samantha Grant, just behind the helming station.
He's got his son there as well.
Yeah, it's a real family affair. It's wonderful.
It's good, isn't it? Incredible. And he'd be enjoying that at the moment. 55 minutes into the race so far, and Comanche leads them and is flying along from Infotrack.
And here's a boat that will also figure well. A 2-time winner, Quest, skippered by Bob Steele. She won in 2008. She won again in 2015 when known as Balance. She was second in 2017, skippered by Mike Green on his 41st race to Hobart. And the spinnaker there says Ponant Cruises. They've got a cruise ship following the fleet down to Hobart, and they're stationed outside Sydney Heads. The Quest, put your money on her if you want a small wager. She'll be there or thereabouts. But there's the race leader trying to take on a big container ship. She'll probably win her to Hobart.
And there's Yacht Tracker 2, which is back in action. And as you can see right now, you can follow the whole fleet. It is amazing over the next couple of days to keep an eye on what's happening. If you've got a favourite boat or you've got family or friends racing, you'll be able to flag it and see their progress as they go down. But Yacht Tracker is a tremendous addition to this race to allow you to follow what's happening. And don't forget, you can watch the finish of the race live whenever that is on 7+. Keep in touch on the Rolex Sydney Hobart website, but 7+ will feature the finish whenever it happens, so stay tuned for that. All right, let's go back to Jimmy Spittle. Jimmy?
Yeah, guys, we're just seeing the tail end of the last boat at the moment, making their way out around the last distance mark. And they're just about to set their spinnaker. So we've got about 156 spinnakers raised, and we'll see the last one in about 2 minutes' time when they go around that final turning mark.
Oh, fantastic, Jimmy. It's been great to have your insight today. From what you've seen, who do you like? Who takes line honours in this race?
Well, the conditions right now really favour Infotrack and Comanche, but as we go into those transitions tonight and for the rest of the race, you're going to see Wild Oats, Blackjack, who really are strong when it comes to transition and having to change gears, do all the sail changes. But again, someone like Stan Honey really is one of the best in the world. So I think it's anyone's game, and I think it's just too early to call who's going to have the advantage.
That's what we love about this race. Jimmy Spittle, been great to have you with us. Thanks for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much, lads.
An amazing Australian sailor, shippers, isn't he? We have so many fantastic Australian sailors we can be really proud of.
Yes, he's skippering the Italian America's Cup challenger for the next America's Cup. So, yeah, one of the very best. Well, there's the divergence in courses. Comanche well to seaward on the bottom right of screen, and the other 4 maxis well inshore as they are south of Botany Bay, making fantastic progress in this freshening nor'easter. You can see the white caps up now. The breeze is probably 20 knots plus 22, maybe 25. It'll be 30 knots this afternoon. And if you can believe it, they'll probably be going even faster.
Now, shippers, you've seen a few of these now. How do you rate the start today?
Oh, terrific. You know, a great job by InfoTrack, as Jimmy said. Comanche just hung back a little. She knew that once she got outside the head, she could put the foot down and probably make a real cause to win line on us. But she's doing a great job at the moment, but safe travelling to all of the boys.
Yeah, credit to the real crews. It has been an amazing start. We hope you've enjoyed at the start of this 75th Rolex Sydney Hobart. From all of us, we hope you've had a great time. We'll see you soon.